Eli Roth's 2002 film, Cabin Fever, is an elaborate tale that explores numerous themes, such as death, life, love, grief, loyalty, and betrayal. To briefly summarize, it's a story about 5 college friends who go on a vacation together, and get caught up in an outbreak of a deadly virus. The film goes on to explore how this specter of death affects each character, and their friendships with one another. 2 of these characters, Jeff and Marcy, are a couple at the beginning of the film, while another pair, Paul and Kern, are teased as being another potential romance. But in a surprise twist, Paul and Marcy come together in the latter half of the film, in a notorious love scene. The scene serves as the culmination of a subtle subplot about Paul and Marcy growing closer throughout the crisis. I've explored this storyline in some of my previous videos. But is there more to the scene than that? Is it more significant to the story of Cabin Fever than we realize? I'm YouTuber and Cabin Fever fan, Heat and Chills. Join me as we search for the true meaning of Paul and Marcy's love scene. The key to understanding the relevance of the love scene is this piece of dialogue.
You don't use condoms?
Don't worry, I'm healthy.
Cabin Fever goes out of its way to tell us that Paul and Marcy aren't using protection. This doesn't seem like a normal conversation to be having at this point, as they would both be aware that they aren't using protection. So why would they bother discussing it? The only reason for this dialogue is to make the audience aware that they aren't using protection. Why does the film want us to know this? At first it may seem like it's an important piece of information for understanding how the disease spreads. But when you think about it, we see numerous other incidents around this time that could explain how Paul caught the disease just as well. In fact, the dialogue could have easily been replaced with a shot of Paul putting on protection, and it wouldn't change the remainder of the film one bit. So the dialogue doesn't serve any useful purpose in terms of understanding how the disease spreads within the film. However, there is one unique piece of information that the dialogue does clarify. That Paul ends up inseminating Marcy. This is confirmed when we see that they are still physically joined when they finish making love. Without the dialogue, viewers would have been free to guess or presume that Paul was inseminating Marcy in this moment, but we would never have known for sure. There would have always been the possibility that he may have put on some protection before they started. The dialogue establishes beyond any doubt that Paul inseminates Marcy. But more importantly, it seems to call our attention to this fact. What's remarkable is that this detail is just one part of a larger pattern within the film. Insemination, or lack thereof, is a recurring subject within Cabin Fever. When Marcy makes love to Jeff, the film clearly shows us that Jeff does not inseminate her. In fact, the ending of this scene is so unusual, it's as if the film is deliberately calling attention to the fact that Jeff does not inseminate Marcy. Later, Karen describes an intimate experience where the role of a male partner is substituted for a showerhead that merely expels sterile water. Then Bert tells a story in which he explicitly describes climaxing without a partner. The film explicitly shows us that Paul and Karen never consummate their romance. And finally, it explicitly shows us that Paul definitely inseminates Marcy. Why does the film give so much focus to the men's climaxes, and especially such specific insight into the fate of their fluids? Art rarely ever addresses the topic of insemination, except when it is associated with the concept of pregnancy. And Cabin Fever is no exception. The film clearly shows us that Paul inseminates Marcy, because it wants us to imagine that they are making a baby. Of course, Marcy doesn't literally end up pregnant in Cabin Fever. So the love scene is merely meant to symbolize impregnation, rather than establishing an actual pregnancy. But why would the film want us to imagine Marcy getting pregnant? Let's consider the film as a whole. Cabin Fever has two main evils, death, and the breakdown of relationships. Paul and Marcy stand unique in the film, in that they are the only pair, amongst the 5 main leads, who grow closer, while all the other friendships fall apart. They are a complete reversal of the film's major theme of relationship decline. And if their love scene is a euphemism for pregnancy, or in other words, creating life, then that is a direct reversal of the film's other major theme, death. Again, this is a trait that is unique to Paul and Marcy. The film shows us that no other 2 characters complete the act of insemination. No other characters perform the gesture of creating life. Paul and Marcy defy both of cabin fever's evils. This can't be a coincidence. Their character arcs have clearly been shaped this way to portray them as the heroes of this film. Making love is the singular gesture that ties these 2 threads of heroism together. It's the moment when they defy the climate of division that has driven their friends apart, and the moment when they symbolically create life. And thus it is enshrined as a moment of great virtue. We can see this in the way it's presented. The lovers are bathed in bright light throughout the scene, as if the gods are smiling down upon them. They are portrayed as being strong, powerful, and determined, yet also immensely tender. The act itself is full of energy, unlike the cutaway shot of Kern, which is deathly still. And at the moment when Marcy would have been impregnated, the precise instant where they created life, her head is framed in a glorious white light, almost like a saint. So now we've explored how the love scene is crafted to imply a pregnancy, how Paul and Marcy are built up to be the heroes of the film, and how the film glorifies their love scene. When we put all these elements together, they convey a profound message about life, death, and the human condition. All of the main characters in Cabin Fever try to evade death, and they all fail. Even the heroic Paul and Marcy. Nobody ever escapes death. But Paul and Marcy confront their mortality in a unique way. Unlike their friends, who either try to flee from death or surrender to it, Paul and Marcy make a stand in the cabin, where they act out their natural instincts to bring forth a new generation, one that will outlive themselves and carry on their legacy. This is why it's so important that Cabin Fever identifies Paul and Marcy as the heroes. Because it's through the actions of the heroes that we discover the moral of the story. In this case, the moral of Cabin Fever is that the most virtuous way to deal with the specter of death is to accept the fact that we will inevitably die, and to invest ourselves in a legacy that will live on after we are gone. And arguably, the greatest legacy we can invest in, is children. This is the idea that is represented when Paul and Marcy symbolically create life in their love scene. In the end, it barely matters that they don't actually have a child together. They willingly performed the gesture of procreation, which is as much as they could do. We mightn't get to see them prevail, but we do see them stand up against death in this noble fashion. For an audience, satisfaction comes more from watching a hero be heroic, rather than simply seeing them avoid disaster. One last interesting point is that neither Paul nor Marcy are among their friends at the end of the film when the bodies are all piled up and burned. Perhaps there is some spiritual meaning to this detail. Perhaps the film is trying to suggest that Paul and Marcy spiritually ascended to a better place than their friends. And perhaps the reason for this is that they used their precious time on Earth to fight for life, rather than focus on death. What do you think? Do you agree that their love scene had thematic links with pregnancy? Have you noticed any other hidden messages in Cabin Fever? Let us know in the comments. And be sure to hit that like button.